Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Jason Falls Show. That makes me your host, Jason Falls. As always, I apologize. There's nothing I can do about that. Today on the program, Christoph Trappe is here to talk about his new book, Content Performance Culture is the name of that. We're going to learn more about basically creating great content, but in the context of a marketing team, so that the workflow and motivation and all that work for, and they can work for, and they can work against you. So we're going to talk about how to make them not work against you, and how to protect yourself against the organizational frustrations you might have with content, lots of other things. Christoph is the author of 3 or 4 other books, including Get Real, Telling Authentic Stories for Long-Term Success, and Get Customer Focused. So we'll learn a lot from him today. Then I'd love to talk a little bit more specifically about how you and your business are dealing with COVID-19 at Cornet. We're very fortunate. We've got a lot of clients. We're very busy. We've got a lot of clients that have hit the gas pedal and thought this is an opportunity for us to shift focuses one way or another, or do certain things that are going to help our customers in this time. And so they're pushing the gas pedal. But we've got other customers, not a bad thing necessarily, and we're going to talk about the good and the bad of both avenues. We've got a couple of other clients that are like, well, we need to be a little bit more conservative here and slow down, not spend as much money, not launch that media campaign, that kind of thing. So I want to talk about that and how you can sort of use this opportunity to market, even though you're not necessarily outwardly marketing, and get ready to hopefully come out of this thing as good as you possibly can. Finally, I'd love to update you on the book. I've hit the home stretch of the writing part, so I'll bring you up to speed on some of the conversations I had last week, which were fantastic. The last chapter that I wrote really came together nicely and had some good expert interviews in there. So just wanted to update everyone. I know some of you are interested in the influence marketing book that I'm writing, and I wanted to give you an update on that. And so that will be coming up in just a few minutes. But first, has there ever been a more appropriate time to figure out your live streaming or web video opportunities? We're all working from home. We've got Zoom calls and GoTo meetings and Slacks and Skypes and Microsoft Teams. And then we also have to market to the public and find ways to get in front of consumers while we sit at home. So you want to look professional when you live stream. It's important to your brand. You want your videos to look professional when you're putting them together. It's important to your brand. Well, you should be using the live streaming and video production software I use for this show. What better endorsement is there from me to you than I use this thing on this show every single week? Switcher Studio is all you need. That software, all you need for Switcher Studio is the software and iOS devices on the same Wi-Fi network. No TV truck, no expensive production studio, no real editing either. If you manage it and run it like a TV show or a TV producer would, you can do it all from an iPad or an iPhone, just like this. I'm going to take the earphone out so I stop hearing myself in the wrong ear or buzzing. And so for those of you watching on the video stream, I'm trying not to drop my iPad while I do this. So there it is. You can see up in the corner, you can see Christoph waiting in the green room. He's going to come in a minute. And so I can hit on these little buttons and do cool things like this, where I throw up the switcherstudio.com/falls graphic on the bottom. So you can go here where you can sign up for a free trial and whatnot. I can also, I don't have Christoph's mic on, but I'll show you the split screen magic where he comes up and I go, hey, look, there's Christoph over there next to me, right? And so then I can go back to just me. He'll come in just a second. But this is what it takes. And literally, I am the director, producer, and everything. I'm just hitting buttons on an iPad. Now, it takes, someone with a crazy brain like mine to be able to do that and talk to you at the same time. But if you've got 1 or 2 people, even remotely, you can sit here and run a show and have fancy graphics and editing and all that stuff for the things that you do for your business or your brand. Go to switcherstudio.com/falls. And you'll get a 2-week free trial if you sign up there. And then if you use the code FALLS, my last name, you get 10% off your subscription for as long as you have it. As long as you don't cancel, 10% off forever. So use the code FALLS when you sign up at switcherstudio.com/falls. Go to that address and sign up for this software. Get that free trial, test it out. You don't have to pay anything, up front. So get that free trial and try it. And as you are starting to build video strategies and maybe even live streaming opportunities during this COVID-19 thing, where we're trying to come up with more creative ways to produce content that keeps our audiences engaged, maybe serves our community and whatnot. You're going to have some professional software that doesn't cost a whole lot of money to be able to look good and represent your brand well. Switcher Studio makes the live recordings of this very podcast look professional, so let them do the same for your live streaming. That's over at switcherstudio.com/falls. If you are dialing into the LinkedIn live recording of the podcast this morning, you can jump over in the comments section and ask questions and interact with us here on the show. I'm checking to see if the technology is permitting today, and it looks as if the technology is indeed permitting. I always have to kind of preface that because every now and then, things go wrong. A couple weeks ago, we had the whole show blew up, so you never know. But my big ugly mug is over there live streaming on the LinkedIn right now. I can see that. We've got a few people in watching the stream as well. Jessica Moore from the Kentucky Chamber of Commerce is back again. She says, good morning. Good morning, Jessica. Great to see you here. I'm sure others will be piling in here in a moment because we're getting ready to talk to Christoph Trappe about a content performance culture. So let's just go ahead and do that. I got to hit a couple buttons on the old Switcher Studio here to make that happen. But let's talk about content with someone who knows a thing or six about marketing and content marketing teams and building them. Christoph Trappe is here. He is broadcasting from the greater metropolitan Iowa area. Christoph, how's Iowa handling the COVID thing?
Oh, I'm doing well, but yeah, like everybody else, we're at home, social distancing, and certainly it's an interesting situation to see how our families nonstop, right?
Exactly. Yeah, it's been fun. Now we've had some interesting stresses in the Falls household as a result of being stuck together. Anybody being locked in the house for me for any length of time is going to go nuts. So I get that. But yeah, it's a different place. But all is well there, though, right?
All is well. The good news, I always like to look at the good news here. We're not in New York City. We're not in a 400 square foot studio apartment, right? I mean, we have some space in Iowa, so that's definitely a plus.
That is true. We can count lots of blessings these days, and that's certainly one of them. All right, so let's get into this. Your new book is called Content Performance Culture. We've been talking about content for a decade or more now with brands. Some get it, some don't. But I take it that you saw a need for this book, which means that many out there may have content, but not a content performance culture. So help us understand what that means. What is a content performance culture?
Yeah, so of course we have a lot of people talking about we want marketing to do something, right? What are the results? Is it working? Are people paying attention? And a lot of people, they don't really know what that means, right? They just know they want it, but how do you get there? And there is a process that you have to go through. And what's so interesting to me, Jason, when I grew up in content and journalism, nobody ever talked about performance, right? How many people read my article? 100,000, whatever the circulation of the print publication was, right? Nobody knew anything about a content performance culture. But there are steps to go through, right? We have to have a good team. We have to produce content that actually matters. We have to produce content that people actually search for. I'm still amazed how many people produce content that nobody searches for, and they go, oh, how come it's not being found? I'm like, because nobody cares about that topic. I mean, like this whole, or I shouldn't be that blunt about it, but maybe they care about the topic, but they use a different term, right? Different terminology. I'll give you this whole coronavirus example as an example here. People use the term coronavirus, right? That is through the roof when it comes to search. Hardly anybody in the world searches for COVID-19, even though that's the official term. Now, kind of a bad example because at the end of the day, most of us will not rank for coronavirus, but you get the idea, right? Use the term that people search and then continuously go after, that relevance and share content on all the different channels.
I love that example, and I've used the example too of when I first talked to businesses, especially years ago when I would work with more small businesses who would talk about search engine optimization. And they say, well, I want to rank well for my name. And I'm like, that's easy. If you own the URL, you're going to rank well for your name. What you want to rank for is the search terms that people use that don't include you. You want the unbranded stuff. And so that's always been fun to try teach people and illustrate that. But I love the way that you started out the book by explaining, 20 years ago, content was created by journalists, and the measurement was basically whether or not your editor liked it, or whether or not you got,
Right.
angry emails or letters from the readers. But now that brands are doing content, they're being held to lots of different standards in terms of, is it driving sales? Is it driving revenue? Is that fair? I mean, have we basically said, hey, brands, here's how you create content, and now we're going to change the rules? Is that really fair for us to have to deal with, or does it matter?
Well, is life ever fair? I mean, no, but right. But it depends on what is your goal, right? And it's very interesting. So the example I gave is the Colin Kaepernick example that Nike did. And, they created an ad. I didn't even think it was a good ad, honestly. But a lot of buzz, a lot of people talked about why would they do it, how would blah, blah, blah. They got a lot of negative publicity. But when you look at the numbers, right? So their competitors, Reebok, Adidas, others, their search went through the roof. So I focused on, look at that. They created content and it's working. At the end of the day, what they did, whether I like it or not, it's totally working. And then later, Nike came out and they said, look at our sales for the quarter. They went through the roof, in part because of this campaign. So measuring things and measuring them on different levels, sometimes it's not fair, and it definitely, Jason, makes it harder, because back in the day, I only had to convince my editor, and if my editor loved me, I was golden. If I didn't get too many emails, I was golden. And today, if I get 5 emails, and this is another example, when I was in B2B publishing, people would say, well, we got 3 emails. They couldn't find something. So this is a terrible user experience. And so we pull up the numbers and we go, yeah, sure. 3 people emailed, but we also had 25,000 who read it and who went through the flow. So who is right? I mean, are the 3 people wrong? Probably not, right? You can improve something, but at the end of the day, should you rip up your day to do something different because of 3 people when you had 25,000 people go through the process, and who knows how many people convert? Probably not, right?
Nothing irritates me more than putting out a social media post that might be based on humor and might be funny, and have 25,000 people like, comment, and share. One person sends an email and the CEO loses his mind, and we have to take it down. Drives me absolutely insane, but such a squeaky wheel, that's the way it works.
Hopefully they'll listen.
That's true. So the old goal of content might have been to inform or entertain. Now the goal might be to drive sales, conversions, change mindset, create awareness, and so on. And I know goals are one of the things you say in the book, help us lay content out that works better. What other facets do you need in this culture to help you build proper content marketing?
You definitely need people who can actually produce the content. And typically, I do like to say that is somebody who can write, whether that's writing for a podcast. I know we're just talking, there's nothing scripted here, but you still need something written, right? Whether it's the show notes or it's the headline or whatever. So you need people who can write, and who can write in a way that works today. And collaboration, Jason, huge thing that we need on any team. And here's the reason why. Because 20 years ago, my boss had all the answers, right? You go to the boss and you say, hey, what do I do here? And the boss says, this is what you do. Today, yes, we have experiences. Yes, we know some things. But guess what? The things change all the time. So you need people who can collaborate, who can try new things. Like even if you're talking about production, search changes, right? I mean, search has changed dramatically with coronavirus happening. I mean, most everybody just searches for that nowadays, and remote work, right? And now everybody's writing about remote work. So you need somebody who can actually produce content that is worth consuming. As a next step, you also need people who can analyze it. I like them to be different people, not always possible, but somebody who can tell you, here's what I see work, here's what I see didn't work. Kind of skip the next role, should have probably been mentioned second, but you also need somebody who can distribute the content. Mm-hmm. And sometimes, you can get away. That does not mean you should create average content, But if you have a rock star distribution strategist, you can get away with average content. And I'll give you an example. I just triggered an email campaign yesterday. It was not even a good email campaign. It literally, all my email said was, thank you so much for attending this session. If you have any questions, you can book a time on my calendar here or reply. Also, by the way, my book is still available for $2.99, a flash sale for the Kindle version. It's $3.99 today if you're listening. And guess what? A lot of people in that email clicked to buy the book. It was the best-selling day ever for the Kindle version. Right. So my point is, I was very opportunistic, right? The distribution strategy worked while the content was just kind of like, thanks for showing up.
Yeah. So when you talk about a distribution strategist, I want to make sure that we're really clear with people on what that means. And so I want to phrase that in this sort of context of a question. What is it about the traditional marketing team or the traditional, corporate setup that isn't right for content performance culture? And what are the specific, job roles, personalities, or execution, expertise that we have to have? Because distribution can mean a lot of different things, but drill down and tell me, who do I need to hire? What does my team need to look like?
So it partially depends on what you already have set up, right? If you have a really good email list and a lot of people on your list and that's already working, you probably need somebody who is familiar with email marketing, whether that's strip campaigns or newsletters or something like that. It kind of depends on what you're trying to accomplish. But it used to be, and I still remember my first marketing job, Jason, it was so interesting. Getting stuff approved was so hard, right? Like you had to go through approval hell, which is what I call it. And you go step by step and everybody wants to approve it. And by the time you're done getting the content created, you are exhausted. So you don't actually have time or you don't have any energy left to distribute it, right? You just go, okay, there you go. I pushed it out. It's published. It's done. But that is at least 50% of what you're trying to do. So whether that's a different person or you do it, so you have to have somebody who focuses on that. So you can't just stop at, okay, we approved the content, good to go, it's done. How do you now get it in front of people? And how do you fiddle with it? And here's the beauty of digital. In print, it doesn't work as easily, obviously, but sometimes I publish the crappiest headlines ever. And I don't catch them until they get published. Well, guess what? Who cares? I'll update it on the next distribution, right? Like in the next newsletter, I'll update the headline. Or for search, I update it. Or the next Twitter post, I update the headline. So you need to have somebody who pays attention to those things. Are the subject lines working? Are the headlines good? Do they make sense? Do they pull people in? How about the social posts? I know we're seeing click-throughs go down everywhere, right? Social, Google, everywhere. But at the end of the day, somebody needs to focus on that and be able to talk about it. And it could be the writer, it could be the content producer, but sometimes if you have the budget available, it is actually very good to have somebody in addition who focuses only on that. Because, and here's the other thing, they don't have a stake in the production, right? So they don't have that emotional attachment. They're just tasked with getting it in front of people.
Yeah, just for an example's sake, which I'm glad to hear you explain it that way, because the way that we have our sort of pillars lined up at Cornett from an agency perspective, which is basically an explosion of a small marketing team, just kind of amplified out. Sure. The way we've got it set up is we have a brand content team. That's our creative people. We have a brand strategy team. Those are the people that obviously come up with the strategies and plans. And we have a brand performance team. And the brand performance team includes our paid media team. So people who plan and buy advertisements and do all our paid search. Our SEO team is on that team. Our public relations team and our social media community management and content publishing team, all under the brand performance, because once the creative is done, it's handed off to us. I mean, we obviously work across those pillars together to collaborate on things, but it's handed off to us and the performance team to figure out, okay, where does it go? Now, I want to make sure that people also understand the brand performance team isn't the team that takes it when it's done only and then does something with it. We're at the table at the front end to say, okay, before you come up with a creative concept, here are all of the different channels that are an option for us to use in this. And then the creative team and we collaborate to figure out is this a social only campaign? Is it email? Is it advertising? Is it some other mechanism?
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of a way that your theory sort of comes to life there. Couple of Barbara Hannon wanted to point out, she's a regular here in the comments and on the as a guest on the show. She's been a guest on the show, but she's also an audience member. She says that you said the email you sent was not so great, but sometimes simple and short is the best content. So absolutely.
Thank you. Yep.
Barbara's not wrong there. Nick Rice has a great question for us. He's been in a marketing leadership on the agency side for a long time. And he said, ask Christoph for best practices when there's a small central marketing team, but thousands of dispersed salespeople who are asked to create content for their territory, but are not writers, photographers, designers, etc. So how do you get everybody to get on the same page and comply with what you want to do to make it look and sound right?
Yeah, that is an interesting question. So first of all, I'm glad I heard you talk about really the create once, publish everywhere model, Jason. And that's also what I'm practicing. I mean, even the show, the Switcher Studio thing, first time I've been exposed to it, you have the video, now you have a podcast, or you have the live video, now you have a YouTube, now you have a podcast going to all the different channels. That's really what I'm trying to do, and I recommend teams try to do, to create content and then repurpose different pieces to different areas. When working with salespeople, it's never been harder, in my opinion, honestly, for sales to be out there and sell anything. First of all, you need to figure out, what are they trying to do? What is their what's their style, right? And what are you trying to sell? So I'll talk about content marketing. Content marketing, people ask me, oh, can I have your sales sheet or your rate? They call it the rate sheet, right? Which in print made sense because it was the same product, right? You buy one page, or you buy 2 pages, or you buy 3 pages. But content marketing, it all depends. What are your goals? What are you trying to accomplish? How do you, what's your budget? I mean, that is one of the best things I always love, when people say, well, here's my budget, and you can figure out what can you do for that budget, because you can do any project for $500,000. So figure that out, and then figure out what are the pieces that you can repurpose for the different salespeople. And listen to them. I don't know enough about their product to go into specifics, how to do that, but certainly find ways to retell that story nonstop on all those different pieces.
What about the opposite direction? Instead of getting content to the salespeople, what about collecting content from the salespeople, the other flow, to be able to source it?
Salespeople are a fantastic source to get good stories from customers, right? Of course, the customer success team as well, or the customer service team. But salespeople, they hear what people love about us, right? Have them talk to their success stories. The one thing sometimes that doesn't work, and the reason a lot of times is not the marketing team. Of course, I'm a marketing guy, right? I can't put the blame on them. Marketing teams do the wrong things too. I get it. But a lot of times it's the salespeople. They're really slowing things down, and they're like, oh, we have to protect our relationship. But think about it this way. If you're trying to protect the relationship, if you have a client who has a fantastic story and who loves you, and the marketing team distributes that story even wider, guess what that will do to your relationship? It will not have negative impact. It'll have positive impact. And I've seen salespeople who do that actually come back and they say, oh my God, they're so happy, right? So think about it that way. It can help the company. It can help you as a salesperson, and they might like it. There's very few people who don't like positive press, so to speak. I don't know if I know anybody.
Yeah. So if I'm a marketing manager, small business or even medium or large business, and I'm hearing you talk about, the makeup of a team and content performance culture and all of the different things that I need to sort of understand. How do I know, as a marketing manager, how can I spot that I might have a content culture problem? If I don't think I do, but what do I need to look for to say, ooh, something needs to change here to make this better?
If you don't know whether or not your content is performing, you have a content performance culture problem. If you don't know, oh, okay, who's reading our stuff? I'll give you another example. I was talking to a CEO a couple of years ago, and he said, the problem with content is that people say they don't have enough time. And that is so true. I don't have enough time either. And I said, so how do you get around this? And he's the CEO of a big publishing company in Germany. And he says, so if people create this much content, right, like let's say 100 stories, and this much content performs really well, and this much content doesn't do anything, stop creating the content that doesn't do anything. And that sounds easier said than done. But I've seen teams turn that, right? So I've actually seen teams use that model, and over 1 year, they created 12% more higher performing content. So that doesn't sound like a lot, but it is a lot because all the content they previously created doesn't go away, right? But at the first step, you have to know how your content is performing. Are people reading it? What's taking off? What's not taking off? Like during the coronavirus pandemic, Jason, some marketing experts said, don't talk about the coronavirus at all. I totally rode the coronavirus wave the first 2 weeks, and I had not seen traffic like that and conversions like that in a long, long time, right? But I hit it really early, and now I kind of went back into regularly scheduled programming. So think about, are people consuming your stuff? Are people doing what you want them to do? Is it raising awareness with the right audiences? And if everything is a hassle, if everything takes weeks and weeks and weeks to create and get out the door, that's usually another sign. You need to be nimble. Of course, what nimble means is kind of open for debate, right? If you're two people, you can publish it today, like you publish your show in an hour. But if it takes you 3 weeks to publish that article on remote work and you're hoping to get customers, everybody will have written about remote work by that time.
Yeah. I am the another frustration that I constantly run into, and that all of you will run into if you're content creators like Christoph or me, and you blog and you podcast and you know how to do it for your personal brand, or you've done it before, and you get into a corporate culture and you're like, okay, let's write a blog post and publish it this afternoon. Yeah, that's not going to happen because 18 people have to approve it, and 17 of the 18 are going to crap all over it. You're going to have to redo it. And so there's processes that you have to figure out. How can we streamline this to make it work? Because editing by committee is just, you might as well just line people up and shoot them, because it's just, it's terrible.
So my tip on that, Jason, on how to get around that a little bit, 100% agreed. And I've seen those blog posts, they're terrible. And then sometimes editor number 3 changes something that editor number 2 changed already, and they changed it back to what it was. It's such a waste. But here's the way. So I just finished a project with a huge brand, and it has taken time to get things approved, but very few changes. And I think the reason that happened is because it's actually under my name, right? It's under my name. They can review it, but they didn't change anything, or the stuff they changed, it was like there was a typo or a word they didn't understand what I was talking about, or they wanted a quote. And the thing is, it's my name, right? So at the end of the day, it still needs to sound like me. Right. And so figure this out. And I've seen that before in other projects too. Find an expert, find somebody whose name it can be under, so that person somewhat has veto power and people understand. This is not their brand voice, it's that person's voice.
Yeah, that's fair. All right, Christoph, thank you for all of the wisdom here. Where can people find you and your book on the interwebs?
AuthenticStorytelling.net is my blog. Join me there. See Trappe on Twitter. I think I mentioned it earlier, Jason. The book currently still available, $3.99 through the end of the day, and I think it goes up to $9.99. It's one of those flash sales for the Kindle version, so I hope you check it out. Content Performance Culture available on Amazon and worldwide, wherever you are.
Awesome. I just dropped some links over there on the LinkedIn chat. I'll make sure they're on the show notes as well to find all of the links that he's talking about, especially where you can get the book on Amazon. So I encourage all of you to go out and get that today. Christoph, stay safe, and thank you so much for joining us today, man.
You too. Thank you.
All right. Have a good one. Christoph Trappe, ladies and gentlemen. Go get that book. Check him out. You've got the links there to see him on LinkedIn and Twitter and all those other wonderful places. And the content performance culture is definitely something that we could all take a look at and make sure that we are in line organizationally to make sure that our content is successful. Checking over on the chat room, a couple of other people have jumped in to say hello. Jonathan Gabby is here. Good morning, Jonathan. Barbara, of course, chimed in there. Thanks to Nick Rice for stopping by today. Good to see you. Simon Charwi is here, says thanks for the opportunity to listen to this live every Tuesday at 8 a.m., man. We're right here, 8 a.m. Eastern. So we will continue to do that. Simon, thank you for stopping in. And then we've got a couple of other comments here. Let's see, Barbara. Oh, this one's like too long. Read later. No. She says, I think you don't need to reference Corona all the time, but you absolutely must be mindful of whether your content is synced with the mindset of the audience right now, which has a thread of Corona influence daily. Fine line to be sure you don't cross it, and you can lose your audience in snap. Absolutely agree with that. I've kind of taken on a personal policy of not really talking a lot about the coronavirus on this show, because that's not what you come to me for. You come to me and you listen to this podcast to hear interviews with other people about marketing and whatnot. Obviously, I'll start in and check out and, hey, Christoph, how's things in Iowa? How are you guys coping with this? And we might get into a little discussion, but I'm not going to focus on Corona a lot because I'm not a healthcare expert. I don't have all the answers. I'm not a reliable resource for that, so I'm going to steer clear of it. I am about to talk about in a minute how your businesses are responding in this environment, but that's less about coronavirus and more about how you're responding to the crisis. So Barbara's spot on as usual with her contribution and advice there on that conversation. So Barbara, thank you for that. Good to see everyone coming in and participating, asking questions on the LinkedIn live stream. If you're listening on the podcast later, know that you can join us at 8 a.m. Eastern time on Tuesdays for our weekly interview show. We are adding other recorded interviews to the podcast feed occasionally, but the main, sort of execution of what we do here on the show is interviewing someone for the podcast, 8 a.m. With a LinkedIn live stream on LinkedIn over there. You can go to jason.online/LinkedIn to find me, follow me so that you can get those He's Live notifications on Tuesday morning. So you can join us. You can chime in on the comments like Barbara, Nick, and Simon and others have done today. You can even ask questions live on the show. I try my best to keep an eye on things while the guest is on. And then, of course, if you have questions of me, you can ask those too. I'm not always useful, but I might have a clever quip to respond to you with. All right, next topic. Let's talk about how we're dealing with COVID, the COVID-19 virus outbreak. And I want to talk about this in the context of what you're doing from a marketing perspective for your business or your brand, or if you're at an agency, what are your clients doing? I told you earlier, and I'll kind of reiterate, at Cornet, we're very fortunate to have wonderful clients. Some of them have reacted somewhat conservatively. Their business is directly affected. Their bottom line is directly affected by the inability for consumers to go out and socialize and go to retail businesses and go to bars and go to restaurants. And so some of them are slowing down a little bit, maybe not launching that, spring media campaign just yet, waiting and seeing, maybe, trimming some budgets here and there to kind of be conservative because they have stakeholders to answer to beyond just us or beyond consumers or beyond bottom line or top line sales. And so some of them are being a little, let's wait and see. And there's good in that because they have quarterly financials to report. They have budgets to make. They can't sort of fall into a shortfall situation because of cash flow or investments or whatever. And so in some business environments, it's better to look at this situation and say, we're going to wait and see. We're going to push pause on a lot of the marketing stuff and we're going to wait and see. And that's a perfectly sound business strategy. We have other clients, fortunately, several other clients, because we've been really busy the last few weeks, probably busier the last 3 or 4 weeks than we were at any 3 or 4 week stretch before, because we have several clients who are like, this is when we need to up the ante on our marketing. This is when we really have to be a willing participant in the community with our customers, with our community of colleagues, even our competition, and really, help everyone get through this. So in the spirits industry, for instance, a lot of the spirits companies are sort of rallying around, hey, we've got to do something to support bartenders and restaurant workers who aren't making any money or got laid off or, are affected financially by this. So it seems like everybody in the industry is kind of figuring out how to do things to help one of their stakeholder groups. And so there's a lot of activity in that industry, not just from our clients, but from lots of others to do things. And that takes communications and marketing to get that information out there, to be able to create awareness for the opportunity for consumers to contribute and help. So that marketing engine still flows. There's also clients who are like, okay, we still have to plan for product launches in Q2 and Q3. We still have to gear up for Q4 and our big sales cycle. We still have to, even though consumers can't go out to retail businesses right now or gather in large groups, people still have plumbing issues. People still need cable TV and internet access. People still need to have their cars repaired, although they're not using them as much. People still need to buy food. People still need to buy clothes. Marketing still has to happen for a lot of businesses. So they are saying, look, whether this lasts 3 weeks, 3 months, or 3 years, we still have to start thinking about what are we communicating to our audiences and how are we building that brand affinity long-term so that we continue to have sales. Even though they might be negatively affected now, we still have to keep, sort of the faucet dripping. And so there's marketing to be had there. Let me kind of throw it at you in the context of a small business. Let's say you are a small retail business. Let's say you have a small clothing shop in your small town, or let's say you are, you're certainly restaurants in this day and age have to immediately stop instead of stopping and saying, okay, we're just going to close and wait and see. Well, you're probably going to go under at that point, right? Because you don't have revenue coming in. So what have they done? They've said, well, we've got to figure out how can we do curbside? How can we do delivery? If they're not connected with DoorDash and Postmates and Uber Eats, how can we get connected with that so that we can continue to produce our product and get it in the hands of our consumers? They're also going to have to communicate and market the fact that they are offering that. So there's marketing to be done, and they've got to quickly pivot and react to be able to sustain their business. If you're a retail location like a clothing store, people aren't going to be able to come into your store. Now is the perfect time for you to figure out, how do I get my products on my website? How do I turn on a Shopify or some sort of e-commerce mechanism on my website so that I can sell things online? And then how can I communicate with my customer base to say, hey, you can still get the things that you buy from me. You can get them online. How do I connect my business with Amazon so that I can be selling things in the largest retail marketplace on the planet, right? So there's lots of things that you can be doing, even if your launch date is weeks away, because you got to learn it all. You've got time. If you don't have the store open right now, you've got nothing but time to start to build to that. Here's another interesting idea. There's a lot of service industry workers at restaurants, bars, and things like that, and retail locations that are out of work right now because they're closed down. Well, maybe you could reach out to a couple of them that and say, hey, do you know anything about the internet? Do you know anything about managing or building a website? Can you help me build an e-commerce thing? I will employ you in this short-term phase of time we're going through because I need help doing this. I'm not technically inclined. So you've got to be creative on what you can do to pivot your business to account for the fact that your revenue's dried up. You don't have foot traffic right now. And so you've got to be thinking outside the box in terms of, okay, I can't sell in my retail store. What do I do? I've got to figure out how to sell online. What does that take? I don't know. Well, reach out to a couple people who might be out of work right now, who could help you, and maybe 2 or 3 of you can sit down and figure it out. There are still businesses out there like lawn care businesses, plumbers, electricians, etc., that are still having to work. And so they still have to market. What they need to do is figure out, okay, how do I market to consumers who are A, stuck at home, B, concerned about workers coming into their house because that could expose them. So I've got to think about how my workforce goes into someone's house to do a service and conveys that sense of, hey, we're safe, we're sanitary, we're going to keep our social distance while we're here, we're going to do all the things we need to do. You might even need to rethink how you train your team who is going out and whatnot. So the situation may seem daunting, it may seem imposing, and you may think, okay, I'm just going to have to suck it up and shut down for now until this thing's over, and then we'll get back to normal. I think we're at a point now to where I don't know if things are going to get back to normal anytime soon. And when they do, even if the restrictions are lifted and we can all go out and go back to the places we used to go, consumers are going to be really leery of shaking people's hands and things like that in the future. So we need to be rethinking about this regardless of whether or not May 1st or May 10th or June 1st or June 15th is the date where we can all get back to our lives, because getting back to our lives now is probably not going to be getting back to the lives we once knew. So whether or not you feel like you need to put on the brakes and not spend money on marketing, or whether or not you see opportunities to help your community, help your customers, and continue to be relevant in the content that they consume and even their consumer behavior, you've got to start thinking about the world that we live in a very different context. I don't think we're going to get back to normal. I think the new normal is going to be a different type of consumer who prefers to do business a different type of way, because Corona-19 or COVID-19 is what's happening now. What about COVID-20? Or what about some other thing that comes down the line in 2 or 3 years? We need to start thinking about that world so that we can be prepared then, and so that we can get through what we are dealing with in the here and now. There's good and bad in this era to pushing the gas pedal. There's good and bad to pushing the brakes. We've got to find that balance so that we can make it through the short term and build for the long term. And I think sitting still and doing nothing is the first mistake you can make in that situation. So think about your business, think about how you are dealing with COVID-19, and hopefully you can find the right activities to invest in the short term to make sure that we all get through this. Also, a quick update on the book. I had, some of you know, a couple of weeks ago, I took the entire week off, had a little PTO, and I took it specifically just to write in the book. And I pounded out 4 chapters that week. So I got almost all the way through it. I got 3 more to go, actually 2.5 more to go. So the writing is almost done. For those of you who are interested in the writing process, I thought I would share with you what is next, because one might think, okay, the manuscript is written. Now you just turn it over to the publisher and eventually it gets on bookshelves and in Amazon. Not so. The next phase of the writing process is what I call the nitpicky phase. So number 1, I'm going to go back through every single chapter and rewrite it. Not completely rewrite it, but just polish, edit, consolidate it down. I've got a couple chapters that are 4,500 words. Yeah, they need to be about 3,000 words. So I got to take out a few stories and massage that. So there's the rewrite, the editing process. Then there's the formatting process. This is one of the ones I don't like. I'm not a real detail-oriented guy. And so going through and making sure that I'm using Oxford commas instead of whatever the other freaking commas called, and making sure that the ellipsis and the M dash and the N dash are in the right places and used in the right contexts. All that stuff is minutia, but I have to submit things to the publisher with all the minutia in the documents so that it fits into their format. Instead of indenting a paragraph or making it a block quote, I have to put a bracket that says block quote, because that's how it goes into their system so that it all lays out the way it's supposed to. So there's the formatting part of it that's kind of annoying. A lot of authors will hire a detail-oriented person to do that. I do it myself just because I'm more hands-on and I don't have a lot of extra money to hire somebody to do that. So there's that part. Then there's the other meticulous part that is annoying as crap. I think I've probably interviewed 40 people, maybe 50 people for this book. I've used quotes from most of them, not all of them, but most of them. And I've used case studies and examples from brands and agencies where they've given me information that I've cited them as the source of where I got this information. Then, so now, once I've got it all written, I have to go back and fact check and quote check, which means I have to get a written permission form filled out by all those people that says, yes, I said this, and yes, you have my permission to use it in a book. And that is just busy work, but it's necessary, right? Publishers have learned over the years that sometimes an author will get a quote from someone. They didn't necessarily get their permission, or the quote was from another publication and they didn't get their permission. And so there's all sorts of lawsuits and stuff that happen when that happens. So in order to protect the publisher, in order to protect me, in order to protect the work, we have to make sure that, okay, everybody says, yes, I said this, and yes, it's checked, and yes, you can use it. So that's a bunch of paperwork stuff. That's annoying. And then the third, much more fun phase, actually, for me, is there are several opportunities in the book for me to have illustrations and charts and graphs and things like that. I have done this in the past in my previous 2 books where the publisher will have their own template and they'll do it. I'm actually using my friend Sarah Clevenger, who is an artist here in Louisville. She's also a marketer and a designer. I have asked her to be my design illustration provider for the book. So all the charts and graphs are going to have a consistent look and feel that she's going to develop for me. Well, I have to go through and say, okay, in chapter 2, page 14, this is the chart that I need, and this is what the chart needs to say, and this is the data that goes into the chart. And then she has to come up with the design and look and feel for it. So I have to put together a list of to-dos for her. And then I also have to get permission from any screen captures that I did of people's tweets or Facebook posts or whatnot, or websites. You're also supposed to get permission from those particular people to use that image, since they own the avatars and the images in that. That's why you'll look in some books and you'll see a tweet from someone and the avatar will be blurred out. It's because they didn't get permission to use the picture, not the tweet, just the picture. So at any rate, there's a lot of monotonous stuff that goes into the next phase of the book. It's probably going to make me a little grumpy, but it's faster and easier than the writing. The writing to me is more fun, but more difficult. This is just busy work, less fun, and a little, frustrating, but it's necessary, and it's ultimately going to make the book really, really good. And then after I submit it, then I got to go through the round of publisher editing, which is like 3 or 4 people at Entrepreneur Press ripping it to shreds and giving it back to me and saying, write it all over again. So that's why the book writing process takes so long. And that's why books, I think, are much more trustworthy sources and resources than blogs and whatnot, because they go through this crazy editorial process. Most books with a legit publisher do. So it's part of what goes into the credibility of being a published author, is this process of making sure it's all tight and signed off on and good stuff. So that's what's going on with the book. I don't know if any of you care or wanted to know that, but if you do, if you ever have any interest in writing a book, understand that the writing part is like the first fourth of it, and the rest of it can be a pain in the ass, but it's necessary and it's part of the process. So I hope that each and every one of you are staying safe and keeping your social distances and not giving in to peer pressure or family pressure to come over just for, there's just going to be 5 of us and we're all good. Yeah, as the Kentucky governor, Andy Beshear, has been telling people, y'all, we can't be doing that. So stay home, stay with the people that you are quarantined with. If you have to go out, certainly be safe. I don't want to see more people getting sick, and I certainly don't want anyone to get to the point to where COVID-19 defeats them rather than the other way around. Too many people, our circles are getting a lot closer. Too many people close to us are either sick or maybe even dying. And I have a feeling it's going to get worse before it gets better. So I just hope that each of you are following all of the different points of information and advice from our government officials and the sources that you trust to make sure that you're staying safe. I, for one, am staying in my house basically by myself. The only contact I come into is when I go to the grocery store, which I have a routine and a process to sanitize myself before I go in, sanitize myself when I come out, sanitize all the stuff I bring into my house. Any packages delivered, I have a sanitization process for that as well. I do go to my ex-wife's house and pick up to drop off my kids. She and her parents are there. They're quarantined. They're being safe as well. So our 2 houses are sort of under the same quarantine pattern. And so we are able to interact because of the children. Wouldn't have it any other way. But I've also had a couple of conversations that said, hey, if we get to the point to where anybody gets sick, we're severing that tie, and the kids are going to go one place and stay there. And that's how it's going to be, because we have to think about, my ex-wife's parents who are older and more susceptible. And so we're starting to think about all these things. So you need to be thinking about those too. I hope you guys stay safe. I certainly want to see this thing go away. I want to see a vaccine and all that good stuff. But until then, we have to be vigilant in what we're doing. So I hope you're doing that. Happy to continue to bring you the Jason Falls Show. I'm very happy that you are continuing to join us, and I hope you will continue to do so, and we can still learn and have some good, marketing fun here while we soldier this thing out. So thank you guys for coming around. Next week on the show, we're going to have Heidi Sullivan from shoot. I don't have the script in front of me, and my brain has farted on me here this morning. So Heidi Sullivan, who used to be with Cision, is now with Upworthy. I can't remember the name of the daggone company, but we're going to talk about it and why it's very relevant to you for search reasons. It's an important show. So join us next week as we'll talk with Heidi Sullivan. You can join us for the live recording of that show with the video stream on LinkedIn at 8 a.m. Eastern, 5 a.m. Pacific on next Tuesday. If you can't join us there live, the audio recording will hit the podcast feed, and the YouTube version of the video will hit the YouTube feeds later that day. That's next Tuesday. That would be April 21st, 2020, when that happens. So I think we have reached the end of the misery here this morning that is, or has been, the Jason Falls Show. I'm kidding. It's not misery. It's fun. I enjoy this. That'll do it for this edition of the Jason Falls Show. If you liked the episode, please share it with your networks or jump over and give us a review on your podcast platform of choice. We appreciate that. Look for me on the social networks. I'm Jason Falls pretty much everywhere. So until next time, everyone, I'll see you on the interwebs.